Hello, I'm Julie Collins. I'm the British Forestry Association Sustainable Officer, and over the last 6 months or so I've been using different mediums and monitoring how they're working, and I thought I'd share some of the good practices that I've learnt on how to use them. So we'll be looking at the different mediums to foam, we'll be looking at fibre floral design media from Smith Oasis, and we're looking at agro-wool as well. Both of those are basalt rock. And I want, first of all, you might have used them, you might not, but if you haven't used them, what I'll do is show you how to soak it. And what I've learnt is a really good practice to keep the stems in the actual medium themselves. So because it's a basalt rock and it sort of comes in layers, what I found, if you use it, if you just traditionally bind it in to your container, what happens is I find the stems tend to fall out a little bit. So how we've overcome that is actually binding it with a bit of string. So first of all, it's a bit different to the floral foam because actually you can just put it straight in the bucket and it doesn't need to be in there very long at all. And you can see how much water it takes up. So it's a bit like a big sponge. And then what we do is take a bit of string, use the natural colour if you can, or you can use some tulle wool or something which is sort of a natural sheep wool. Careful with the dye and anything that you use, it doesn't leach out. And I'm just going to wrap it around the block. Now you can wrap it around dry, although when you do soak it you might find that the string shrinks back a bit. I'm just going to go around, so creating a grid all the way around and then tie it off. That didn't take very long. And you can pre-prep this, if you know, with your bits of fibre, pre-doing the design to save time. And surprisingly enough, just doing that seems to stop the stems slipping out. The other thing that, I'm just going to use a little block here, look, to mop it up. So then just have a look at what you can place the fibre in. So if you're using a plastic bowl, that's great as long as you can reuse it and repurpose it. So that's part of your circular economy. Ask your customer to bring it back so that you can reuse it over and over again. And the longer that plastic stays in the economy, the better it is for the planet. So we're not dissing plastic as long as it's not single use. So that'd be great to reuse those. Other things that I've used is, we've used sort of like strawberry containers. They're okay for funeral work if it's going on the grave, because they're not that waterproof, but they'll be great for, this is very wet, so it does soak through, but it helps contain things. Better for moths, I find. And a few more of these sort of bio trays. And obviously you've got the actual proper, bio tray here that you can buy, and they're great because they're a bit more robust and they seem to be able to get wet without crumbling, like some of these other things that I've tried. And also we've got a little bamboo dish as well. So there's all the things that I've been using, and I've found the bio trays are obviously the best product, but they're a little bit more expensive. Food trays are okay. So it all comes down to what the actual thing is for and what you choose. So if it's going to a grave and it's just going to sit there and biodegrade, then you could get away with those. So the plastic is good because it stops the seeping through. Then the second thing I've learnt is that the idea is you'd be good to put a bit of string around this, but what happens if you put string around is that it takes the water and makes the whole string wet, which if that's going on a customer table can cause a bit of a problem because they will have two wet lines, tram lines underneath, which can damage their table. So if you're going to put string around, it might be an idea if you tell the customer, or you sell a little platter that it goes on as well. Alternatively, we might just have to go back to strapping it in with a little bit of pop tape for the time being until something better comes along. So, it's all about evolving as we go. The second thing I've learned about this is actually if you do traditionally foliaging up and then flowers, it's much more difficult. It's better to put the flowers in first. So it's a different way to how maybe we've been trained. I know some florists used to do this years ago, put the flowers in first, but I was certainly taught how to foliage first. Cut the stem at a sharp slant like you'd normally would, and if you just twiggle the stem in, it grips really well and it's in nice and firm. So if I'm doing a posy now, I would place all my flowers in situation, all the flowers in, and then I would just pop in afterwards and foliage up. The great thing about that, you don't use half as much foliage as you do when you foliage up first, and also it really celebrates the flowers nicely. But the grip is so much better with the string around it and putting the flowers in first, because you can see all the placements of the flowers and they've all got their own little space. Because other than that, when I first used it, after a few, if I foliaged up first and put the flowers in, it did actually start to crumble before I came up with these ideas, and other people have come up with these ideas as well. So that is the fibre. The second thing I want to talk, that I have to say I'm really sold on sand at the moment. Sand for me, it looks quite nice in a glass container, but there is certain ways to use it that I found works best. First of all, so we use play sand, which is basically a sand that has been created by bashing rocks, so it's not from a beach. So I suppose it has sustainability issues itself in the respect that it's a machine that's made it. But the good thing about it is that you can reuse it over and over again. If you put some boiling water over it, cleanse it, and let it dry out a little bit, then you can use it, and we've no problems with that. And also I found the flowers hold up quite well in this, and they last, especially like parallel designs, they've lasted 2 or 3 weeks. So I really love this idea. So, but I found my top tip for this is to keep it like it is, quite like on a beach, quite soft. Place your stems in. So we've got the iris here. So just place the stem into the sand, because there's no resistance while it's soft. So honestly, this is not a design. This is just me showing you how to place stems in. So I put a couple of stems in. And then if you actually add water to that afterwards, so I'll take a little bit from my bucket here. Obviously you don't want to make it like the tides come in, but by tipping some water in, what happens is it hardens, and it obviously gives it a nice water source, but that actually is gripped the stems. So what you find is it's hardened the sand to a point where it's gripping the stems and it's quite stable. And then that just needs topping up every couple of days, just a little bit, to keep the moisture in there. But they love that. I think it holds it quite well. So that's another option. And then finally, sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss, again, is really great. Make sure it's commercially sourced. People have certificates to collect it, and it's sustainable. But the lovely thing about this, it's best to store it dried out, because it doesn't smell. Keep it in its string bag, and then soaking it to re-soak it. Again, look at the amount of moisture it retains. And there's 2 ways of using it. You can get this, which is biodegradable. It's the copper wire, the Oasis copper wire, which is great if you want some stability around there. But that's quite expensive, I suppose, if you're adding extra cost to the design. So I found actually, again, wrapping this in string into the container works really well as well. So I do the same sort of thing, just bind it around with string, creating a bit of a grid, and it's just holding it all together, ready for the stems to go in. So just tie that back off. Obviously you can do it as big as to the size according to the container. Just cut that a second. And again, what we've found, and this is my colleague Tina's idea, is not plastic knitting needles, because you can clean them really easy. If you actually make a little bit of a hole, so if the stems are tricky to get in, make a little hole first with a knitting needle. Obviously not every stem needs a hole, some of it they'll go in because they're strong. So I'll just put that in, and then you can take the stem into there, and that holds it really well. And again, we found that holds up really, really well. The flowers seem to like the moss because it's very, it's got lots of water source in there. To store it once you finish with it, again, just let it dry out, you know, bring it all back in, let it dry out, and then you can reuse it over and again. So there you go, that's a few things that I've learnt. I thought I'd pass that on to you. Hope you enjoyed it.